And I would like to welcome on stage right now our next presenter, which is Sandra Brogdon, founder and publisher of Role Model Magazine and Unstoppable 100 Trailblazing Women and Girls Coffee Table Book. Please welcome on the stage, Sandra.
Oh, wow. Good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Liv Lowe. Let me get my notes here. So it is with great honor and privilege that I introduce our esteemed guest speaker to deliver the opening remarks for the 2024 International Women's Day Forum, the Honorable Ukemi Awakensin-Jeter. When Ukemi migrated, I know she's awesome. I have a long paragraph to read about all the amazing accomplishments, but when Ukemi migrated to the United States at the tender age of 18 to attend college, she could not have imagined that her immigrant experience would be more than a journey of academic pursuits. It became a profound exploration of identity, resilience, and purpose. Today, Ukemi is a partner at a national law firm, an elected official, and a sought-after speaker on immigrant leadership development. In 2021, she was named by the Columbus CEO magazine as one of the future 50 leaders in groundbreaking time for diversity and inclusivity. She's also named as one of Role Model Magazine's 2024 Unstoppable 100 Trailblazing Women and Girls Shaping Our World. Most recently, she achieved a historic victory as the first woman and person of color to assume the esteemed positions of mayor and city council president in her community. This historic milestone serves as a testament to her unwavering dedication and commitment to breaking boundaries. With her unwavering determination and unwavering dedication, Ukemi envisions a brighter future for her community where inclusivity and progress reign supreme. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Ukemi Awakensin-Jeter as she shares her insights and wisdom with us today. Thank you. Thank you, fabulous.
Wow, I'm still trying to live up to that intro. Thank you, Sandra, for that wonderful introduction. You're truly my sister from another mother. Sometimes we're mistaken as each other, so it's it's nice to you to be able to give the intro. Well, welcome to this International Women's Day Forum. Before we get into this wonderful program that they have planned in the panel, I wanted us to take a minute to truly reflect on the theme of today's forum. Inspire inclusion, right? But take a look at that subtitle. How war impacts women and children. We know that women and children are vulnerable in times of war and actually disproportionately impacted. But I believe it does not have to be that way. Women are peacemakers. Women can drive change. Women can push for progress. Now, we have been on this gender equity journey, at least here in the United States, for 5 decades. And at least in the last decade, women now outpace men in graduating from colleges and universities, not just here in the US, but across. Actually, here in the US, 58% of people that graduated from college last year were women. Yet I want you to take a look at the state of women in leadership. It will blow your mind, right? 7% of Fortune 500 CEOs, women. 18% of state governors, women. 30%, at least in academia, we're doing slightly better, women. Law firm managing partners, 12% women. These stats, even for the ones that don't love math around us, should be jarring. If women are graduating college, 58% of them graduating college, all women, why are they not at leadership tables? You see, I believe the solution to resolving conflict, to pushing for that change, to paving the way for more peaceful dialogue, starts with women being at the table. If you'll indulge me for a quick second, I'll tell you my story to leadership, and I hope it inspires your journey to leadership. January 2021, I declared my candidacy for Upper Arlington City Council. When I did so, I'd only lived in Upper Arlington for a little over 2 years. People thought I was nuts. I had zero name recognition. I was new to the community, and I had a name like Ukemi. If anyone, for those of you in here, I don't assume everyone knows about Upper Arlington. It's a 105-year-old community, and up until 1970, it redlined people like me out. Blacks and Jews could not live in Upper Arlington. But when I moved with my 2 kids. And I show this picture because this is what drove me to run for office. My daughter Aubrey in that picture, about 2 months into living in Upper Arlington, came home and said, "Mom, can you straighten my hair for school tomorrow?" Why is a 5-year-old asking to straighten her hair? And for the black people in the room, you know we just don't straighten our hair. That needs to be like a special occasion, it's gotta be someone's wedding, like she should have some context why we straighten our hair for school. That would lead me to pay attention to community, pay attention to how people feel like they belong. That was my driver, along with the events of 2020 that everyone remembers. Not only did we have COVID, but we also had George Floyd. I knew that in order to push for progress, to engage in dialogue, to inspire inclusion, despite 0.7% of people in Upper Arlington being black, right? The least amongst us can still have those conversations. But it will startle you when I went to the patriarchy, the powers that be, the people that have always led. You know, I just have always assumed that you talk to the current leadership and you share that all your thoughts and what you think they should do for change. It became apparent in those conversations that we can't just phone it in. We can't just write it in. We've got to step into the arena. And that's why I stepped into the arena. And you know what? I knew zero about politics, but I knew women. And if you're going to get the job done, you were looking at the women that made up my campaign team. Those 3 women had never run, didn't know anything about politics, but we knew we could mobilize. We knew we could knock on every single door. We knew that once people heard the message, they would join. And we knew that we had to be the change that we wished to see in the world. So I announced, and that community of 4 became a community of almost 75 people. Not all of them are pictured in here. We knocked on every door in Upper Arlington. We tried to reach every resident that we could at least twice. So while it surprised the media outside of Upper Arlington when I won my seat for city council, you can see my mom. My mom is in the audience today. Hi, Mom. My Nigerian parents were able to join me when I was sworn into office. I share that story because if we are going to stop the suffering, if we're going to inspire inclusion, if we're going to help the most vulnerable amongst us, we are going to have to be in the arena. I'm going to share 2 things that I've done recently because I am on a mission to ignite fearless leadership amongst the women, amongst the most marginalized amongst us, because I do truly believe that once we step in the arena, once we are at the table, once we're having the conversation, we will advance peace, we will advance equity, we will close the gender gap. I collaborated with 29 other authors across the United States that my story may sound unique here in Upper Arlington, but when we look across the United States, there are history makers everywhere. And so we collaborated on this book, and there are 29 voices in there, including mine, a chapter on fearless leadership. That should be coming out this month, but you can pre-order. I also have another book coming out in June. June is Immigrant Heritage Month, and I'm so glad I see a bunch of immigrants in here. And I wrote a book on immigrant, and this particular one is actually for the business leaders. And the business leaders and understanding how immigrants are going to shape the workforce, because I was startled by the stats, and I am a numbers person. I started my career as an engineer before pivoting to law. I was startled that only 3% of Fortune 100 CEOs are immigrants. Again, another set of people that we need to be at the table. And so that's why I wrote Immigrant. So we're getting ready to listen to a panel. As we listen to that panel, we're going to hear different perspectives on how it impacts their industries and war and children, and it's going to be heavy stuff. But as you're listening, what changemakers do is hear within themselves, well, what can I impact? What can I do? As you start to percolate with those ideas, what can you do? I will challenge you when you leave this auditorium to figure out how you are going to get in the arena. Find your people and let's do it. We're out of time. It's time for women to lead. Thank you.
All right, can we do one more round of applause for Kenneth? Thank you. My name is Rebecca Nelson, and I'm just a member of the Planning Committee. I no longer have any affiliations. I retired 2 years ago. Yes. And now I can speak my mind without being beholden to any systems and organizations, right? But it is my deep privilege today to introduce Sarah Kulabdar as our keynote speaker for today's event. I'm going to read just a little bit from the bio that you can find in the program, and I hope everybody scanned the QR code if you're able to. There's so much wonderful stuff about Sarah. But I just want to start by saying she is relentless. She has broken down barriers in establishments and spaces that lack the voice of someone who is directly impacted by the legacies of war. She earned a seat and became the first Lao American to participate in the 20th meeting of states parties to the Mine Ban Convention. And you're going to hear in a few minutes how important this work is. By unanimous vote, she was elected to serve as the chair of the U.S. campaign to ban landmines and cluster munitions coalition this year. She is the first BIPOC, millennial, and person with lived experience in an impacted country to take on this leadership role. But I wanted to say I've known Sarah since she was a student at Ohio State. And she's one of those people that has tremendous light and passion and energy and compassion and is unafraid to bring up tough topics. And as our mutual friend Deborah Carvalho and I talked about her, and Deborah is here today, they worked together at United Way not that long ago. But we were reminiscing on how she is one of those select people who is fierce in their work. And what we're going to hear today is themes about making sure you're at the table. Sarah also makes sure to bring people along with her. So Sarah,
My friend, please join me at the podium for your keynote.
Good afternoon. So I'm going to step away from the podium so you can see my towering height. First, Rebecca, thank you so much. Everything right back at you. I think Rebecca is one of those people who, if I didn't have her in my life as my advisor for Omega Tau Zeta at the Ohio State University, I wouldn't be standing here today, so thank you. So it's so good to be here with all of you today, and I echo everyone's sentiments on a deep appreciation for our organizers, sponsors, but really for you all taking the time, especially on this vital topic of the impact of war on women and children. So today I'll be sharing a little bit about my own family's journey with linked stories, some of which will be very difficult to hear. And I encourage and invite all of you to express your emotions in any way that feels right to you. And if you need to step out, please feel free. So I grew up in the southern part of Laos. So Laos is in the heart of Southeast Asia. It's a tiny land-linked country, roughly double the size of our great state of Ohio. So I grew up in Champasak province. Besides my godmother, Buntan, who has been to Wat Phu? Show of hand. Okay, well, I invite all of you to go. So the Champasak province where I grew up is home to ancient Wat Phu. So this Wat Phu means mountain temple. And this predates the more famous cousin, the iconic Angkor Wat in Cambodia. And it also predates the Notre Dame Cathedral in France. So you know that it is super ancient and a highly revered Buddhist site and site of importance for the people of Laos. So when I was a little girl, my grandmothers would take me to Wat Phu. And I just remember running around, chasing the goats, and the notorious cats, my favorite. And then my grandmother would call me over, and we would all climb up the steep steps, you can kind of tell from the picture, in sweltering 100 degrees heat. And by the time we get up there, my grandmothers would drench us with the holy water that's collected from the mountain. So you all know I'm extra blessed with piles of water. So growing up, these were some of the memories that I have. And why we visited Wat Phu so much was because my grandmothers really wanted us to learn how to pray for our ancestors as well as pray for my parents' safe return. So my father was a surgeon, and he traveled all over Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam with my mother, who's a seamstress. So Dad worked on countless victims of UXO, or unexploded ordnance, or unexploded bomb accidents, and my mother would alter clothing for those who had a missing arm or a missing leg. So here you can see that's my mother, and of course I'm the cutest one, so the one in red, obviously, right? Thank you. So, by the time I started going to school, I was very accustomed to having unexploded ordnance in my childhood. It was just something that was always there. And when we started going to school, my siblings and I, my parents taught us to walk only on well-worn path in order to avoid danger. And in our neighborhood, in my school, I thought we were safe. Until one day, after coming home from school, we heard loud banging, knocking on our door. Villagers came out asking for my father to come and help. So my dad rushed out, and when I followed him and when I finally arrived, the images and the sound that I heard that day still haunts me to this day. One of my classmates, La, was crying in pain, and her mother was wailing in anguish. She was begging for my father to save her daughter's life. My dad was forced to amputate La's leg. There was so much blood. Everything was red. He had to do that in order to save her life. So La was only 5 years old. And this happened in 1989. My parents made a decision that day that Laos was no longer safe for us. So in 1990, we fled Laos, and we landed in Washington, D.C. We drove past the White House, the Pentagon. Huge monuments. All the magnificent buildings. I was in awe of my new home, but completely clueless as a 6-year-old of the link and the history between the United States and my birth country. So that's my dad. So during the 60s and 70s, the United States dropped over 13 million tons of ordnance on Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. In Cambodia and in Laos, it was all done in secrecy. In Laos alone, from 1964 to 1973, the United States dropped at least 2.5 million tons of ordnance on Laos, a neutral country. This was 580,000 bombing missions. That's equivalent to a plane load of bombs every 8 minutes, 24 hours a day for 9 straight years. This earned Laos the unwanted title of being the most bombed country per capita in history. More bombs were dropped on Laos than on Germany and Japan combined in all of World War II. So you might be wondering, what kind of bombs? White phosphorus, bombs that melt your skin immediately on contact. It's excruciating pain. That's if you survive. 5,000-pound bombs. And bombs the size of a tennis ball, like the one I'm holding here. This is called a cluster bomb. And there's about 80 million plus of these that still litter Laos. These bombs are indiscriminate. They're purposefully designed to look like toys. Some of them have ribbons on it. And to a small child, they mistaken it for a toy. Globally, these account for 50% of all deaths for children. 50% of deaths from cluster munitions are children. And this is exactly why the majority of the world, over 120 plus countries, have already banned these types of weapons. The United States is not one of those countries. And within our arsenal, we have 5 million still there, ready to kill any time. No. So, even after the war, if you escape the danger, that's not the end of the journey. So my dad is the eldest of 9 children, and 6 out of the 9 are women. Are sisters, I should say. So he had 6 sisters, and being the eldest, he felt a great responsibility in order to get his siblings out of Laos. So during this time of chaos, 2 of them were separated. My 2 aunts, ages 16 and 17. And when they finally crossed over and reached the Thai border, it's another journey of difficulty. So Laos, culturally, majority of women are very modest. Most of us don't even change in front of our own mothers. So when they reached the border of Thailand, my 2 aunts, 16 and 17-year-old, were forced to strip in front of 5 males. And they had to do this in order to save their life. It's either you do that or you don't get to come in. After that, my 2 aunts lived in constant fear. Fear of being raped, fear of starvation. The meager meals that they were able to have on most days were just rotten rice and a generous helping of maggots. Now, the atrocities that happened in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam are not outliers, but they're actually something that's a consistent theme all over the world. This is a list that I pulled from the International Rescue Committee, and this list only includes 20. And we all know that there's so much more. And I like to call out just two that are not on this list. So my family and I were welcomed into the great state of Ohio in 1995. And I love this state so much, and I consider myself an Ohioan. So we arrived here along with many Southeast Asians before and after us. Today, there's about 30,000 plus Southeast Asian diaspora here in Ohio. And while life here, when we first arrive, has been challenging, it's not perfect, the one thing that I'm so thankful for, and I know many others are as well, is the fact that we're at least safe here, free from the danger of unexploded bombs. But that's not the case with those that still remain in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Today, So, of the bombs that were dropped, the 13 million tons of bombs that were dropped, between 10 to 30% of them failed to detonate on impact, meaning that there's still 50-year-old plus bombs that are laying dormant, waiting for a child or an animal to trigger it, right? So since the war ended officially in all 3 of these countries, 1975, at least 200,000 people have been killed or injured. And that number will continue to grow unless we clear these American bombs out first. Now, Central Ohio is very diverse. And, I love and appreciate the diversity here in our home state. There's so many people here who are either refugees or immigrated to this great state. There's folks from Afghanistan, Ukraine, Eritrea, Congo, Mauritania. Just wanted to highlight the plight of our friends here from Mauritania in particular. So Mauritania officially abolished slavery in 1981. Making it the last country to formally abolish slavery, right? Now, and it criminalized the act of slavery in 2007 and again in 2015. Yet, here in the state of Ohio, there's roughly around 8,000 Mauritanians who fled here, and they fled extraordinary circumstances, including systematic slavery and terrorism. And I'm so proud that our leaders here in Ohio have taken steps in order to grant our new neighbors asylum, temporary asylum, and I hope that becomes permanent. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the security of all persons. And the United Nations High Commission on Refugee estimates that there's 110 million people all over the world that have been forcefully displaced from their home country. So, in my opinion, collectively, we're doing a poor job upholding this universal human rights declaration, especially for women and young children. And this, has been reiterated through so many people already today. So before I close, I want to talk about Palestine, Israel, the conflict there that have been going on for decades, and that is just now capturing the hearts and minds of people from all over the world. Now, this war is not a secret war, and we live in a time where there's such a great abundance of information, right? It's really hard to look at the images sometimes, but I'm coming from the perspective of someone whose ancestors have been colonized, have been subjugated, have been bombed to death. So for me, when I see these images, I can't stay silent. So in particular, I wanted to highlight a chilling Washington Post story from last month, highlighting the impact of this war on women and children. In just a little over 5 months, the death toll is over 30,000 people. 2/3 of that are women and children. There's a story that I'm part of a coalition, and we were talking about this. Right now in Palestine, there's an estimated 52,000 pregnant women, and they're living in unimaginable circumstances. Cramped, filthy spaces, fear of war, fear of how they're going to keep their unborn child alive, fear of how they're going to deliver their child. CARE International estimates that 40% of these pregnancies are deemed high risk. That means that the child may not be born. And if the war continues, this is the amount of women each day that will lose their lives. Without mothers, how can a child survive? Without their father, how can a child live? I read lots and lots of reports on this, and on war in general. And I haven't seen this acronym in a very, very long time. WCNS. Wounded child, no surviving family. This is unacceptable. My father and mother were children who grew up during a war, and I can tell you that the trauma from it impacted all of their lives. And it also impacts deeply the lives of their children. War has enduring consequences, and the journey towards healing the wounds of war is long and difficult. My friends, let me just say, the actions like indiscriminate bombing and killing of known civilian targets, like the one in Southeast Asia, in Palestine, and all over the world, stems from a place of inhumane and racist ideology. This disgusting logic of placing a higher value on the lives of those who are deemed different, either by religion, skin color, or where they're from. And it is unacceptable, and it's one that can be changed. And change can only happen if we speak up. It's our responsibility to hold our leaders and international leaders accountable for their actions or their inaction. And people all over the world are doing exactly just that. And while change may not happen immediately, I promise you, change will come. I'll close with this final story. So this image is part of a collection that Legacies houses. It's called The Originals. This is the only primary source documentation written or illustrated by victims fleeing the bombing in Laos themselves. This particular one is drawn by a 16-year-old child who witnessed their school and classmates and teacher being burned alive by bombs. And the world may not have known about this during that time had it not been the bravery of two men, Fred Branfman and Bunyang Luangprasert, who secretly collected these illustrations and testimonies and brought them back to the United States. So Fred Branfman, he actually testified in front of Congress in 1971, and he exposed the secret American war in Laos to Congress, the CIA. He exposed the CIA's crime and the president's crime. And 2 years later, the bombing stopped. But that would not have happened had someone not spoken up. Fast forward to the year 2016, President Barack Obama became the first sitting United States president to visit Laos and acknowledge America's role during the American Secret War there. He also announced a historic funding amount of $90 million spread out in 3 years. So $30 million a year to clean up the bombs, to assist victims, and to invest in explosive ordnance risk education so children know what dangers the bomb pose. Funding in 2016 was only at about $10 million a year. So Legacies of War has kept up the momentum. And I'm so proud to share today that funding for Laos is at a historical high for bomb clearance, victim assistance, and explosive risk ordnance education at $45 million US. Thank you. But, we can't celebrate just yet. So while $45 million seems like a high number, I want to share that on average, in today's dollar, the United States government spends $16 million a day to bomb Laos. $16 million a day for 9 straight years. So our work is far from being done. We have a long, long way to go, but we will never stop fighting, and I hope that you'll continue to support us. So I feel a great privilege to lead Legacies Award today. I never would have dreamed to be in this role, to be able to give back to my birth country and my people, as well as my new home. As an American, I'm very proud to be doing this and to hold our government accountable. As a young girl growing up in Laos, I never knew the experiences of my family, my own experiences, would have such an impact on the world, and that the world would actually listen to someone like me. So to all the young ladies, all the women out here listening today on live stream and here, I want you to know whatever you're fighting for, whatever you're passionate about, your voice, your experiences, your truths, they hold something very powerful, and you deserve to be heard. And I hope you'll continue to lift your voice and your words. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. Kapdayalai. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. You touched everybody's heart in the audience, I'm sure, today. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I don't know what to say after this. I would like to introduce our poet for the day. She's an amazing 15 years old who won the 2023 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Youth Oratorical Contest. Her dedication to justice and unity shines through her accomplishment. She is currently attending Weston High School at the Columbus school system. Her parents are both from Palestine, and she's a first-generation American. She has been writing poems for the last 8 years. The piece she's going to share with us today is inspired from the horrific situation in Gaza that rises to the level of genocide. Please welcome Adonia Balkis with me. Adonia.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. As she said, my name is Adonia Balkis. I'm 15 years old, and I'm a first-generation American, and I'm extremely proud to be here today and to represent my people. Thank you. The future of my people lies in your hands, and it seems as though explosives come out of your glands. Surround my home country with harrowing demands. Are you truly grasping the weight of your commands? When asked, you continuously reject a possible seas of hostilities. Palestinian lives are not equivalent to world liabilities. You cannot sit here and be pro the people and ignore thousands of civilians with newly formulated disabilities. Whether you're pro-life, pro-choice, a feminist, or a leftist, why has your mouth been shut? Is this not in the realm of your responsibilities? An American doctor visited Gaza and referred to this as an annihilation. We're told to never forget prior horrific historical events, yet you look the other way when it comes to a current one and simply label it a situation. Citizens are being removed but cannot truly escape this occupation. This is not the elimination of a few people. This is mass murdering a whole population. You cannot call this a simple evacuation. This is a 40,000 person assassination. Approximately 40% are children. Their vulnerability should lead to your devastation. Today, they should be in school receiving a good education, learning about personification and alliteration, not practicing by taking note of bursting bombs blasting, bestowing background radiation. counting down the days to their graduation, not how many days they've been locked in this new form of incarceration. Look at the photos into their eyes, see their stomachs caving in and their bones poking out from beneath their skin. How can you look at this and remain in sedation? They've cut the flow of human and state circulation. There's nothing justifiable about their starvation. Receive limited supplies and lack of immunization. Health professionals are operating without proper sterilization. There is nothing they can do but stare and pray at the pulse modulation. Bodies are not properly buried. This is bringing back a form of mummification. They'll strip men of their clothing and wrap them like a child with the intent of pure dehumanization. Women must rest with their hijabs with the fear of soldiers' teleportation. Children are creating their own ways of nutrition with animal food accumulation. How can you possibly take this in a different interpretation? Look to them and ask yourself why these children lack your valuation. This hate continues to break UN rules and any kind of regulation. There is no way to sugarcoat the situation. These people are experiencing privation. If I am personally targeted in America due to my blood relation, I cannot even begin to fathom the impact of this traumatic indentation. You have failed my country as my nation. Yet even through the torture, these mothers raised in camps, growing up in this prison, raised children full of hope, power, and inspiration. You can be raised in this man-made hell and never fail to keep their kind of determination. Each individual is a phoenix, rising from the ashes that'll continue to pass on this reputation. The Palestinian resistance is the most powerful form of retaliation. Thank you.
Thank you, Adunia, very much. We know that there is a star is coming up, 15 years old, and she can say that she's amazing. So I'm sure you will have an amazing future. So again, good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all. I'm Samia Alzir. I'm Human Relations Specialist, the Vice President for the Arab American of Central Ohio. And I'm going to be your moderator today for the panel discussion. I'm really honored to facilitate and moderate this very important topic today. I am also a very proud member of the International Women's Day Committee since it started 14 years ago. I would like to go ahead and invite our panelists to the panel here to join me at the podium. We'll start with Dr. Dorothy Hassan, the Executive Director for Our Helpers. Christina Vera, President of Columbus Board of Education and co-founder and Director of Operation of Femergy. Dr. Amy Schuster, a member of Jewish Voice for Peace in Ohio and member of Justice for Palestine in OSU. Thank you so much. Please have a seat. And we're really honored to have all of you today to share your expertise on this very important topic. The 20th century may well be recognized in history as one of the most conflicted, troubled times of modern world. Compared to previous centuries, more wars are taking place, and these wars last longer and they are more devastating. It is estimated that close to 90% of the people who got killed or casualties are civilians, the majority of whom are women and children. Compared to a previous century, 90% of those who lost their lives were military personnel. So our topic could not be more timely. I would like to start with a question to the audience quickly and ask, who can guess how many countries around the world having war right now, currently? Number? 14. More, unfortunately, way more. More than 26. No, thanks God it's not that. It's 32, very close. Unfortunately, 32 countries around the world are part in a warfare. That's 1/3 of the world countries. And this number been consistent in the last 50 years. So like I said, this topic could not be more timely. Thank you so much for being here today with us. And we're gonna start our discussion. I'm gonna start by asking each one of you to please briefly introduce yourself and the work you do. So we're gonna start with Dr. Dorothy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for this humbling opportunity to share the stage with these scholars and to share some afternoon with all of you. My name is Dr. Dorothy Hassan, and I humbly lead a nonprofit organization where we support and empower immigrant families in Franklin, Ohio. I am not an immigrant or a refugee, but I am the wife of, which means that I consider myself in a unique position to see some of the things that are happening with the immigrant and refugee women in Central Ohio who may not have that voice to articulate some of those challenges. I'm also a small business owner and a professor.
Shall I go? Oh. Hi, I'm Amy Shuster. I'm a faculty and staff member in the Department of Philosophy at The Ohio State University. I'm also a proud member of Jewish Voice for Peace, which is a national organization. We have a local chapter here that's calling for a nonviolent, just resolution to the conflict in Israel and Palestine through grassroots movement and political advocacy. And I'm also a proud member of a newly formed chapter of faculty and staff for Justice in Palestine, which is an organization designed to support students for justice in Palestine at The Ohio State University.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Christina Vera, and I am one of the co-founder and director of operations for a local nonprofit organization called Femergy. And we empower and support and develop young girls and women here in Central Ohio to help provide more opportunities for exposure and leadership, corporate America, in addition to academia support. In addition to, I am also the first Latina president of the Columbus Board of Education. I'm newly elected. Thank you. As a proud product of Columbus City Schools, I'm a mother of children who attend Columbus City Schools. Public education is near and dear to my heart, and it's been an honor and privilege to come back and serve a district that served me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, all of you today. Like I said, to share your expertise on this topic. I'm going to start with Dr. Dorothy. Modern research suggests that trauma our ancestor experienced does not affect them alone. It actually, the studies indicate that trauma, especially war trauma, can be passed down to future generations. With each new study, we are learning more and more about the impact of war on women and children. How are you experiencing the impact of war and trauma on the community you serve?
In the community right now, what we're talking about is just the surface level of mental health awareness, because we have so many issues that are just not even being spoken about. So one specific issue that women are always the front face of is scarcity trauma. And scarcity trauma is absolutely more than just the result of financial insecurity, but it's the deep psychological wounds that are the result of a consistent level of lack of basic needs. So when you see the lines of women and children having to line up for food, when you think about just the responsibility of knowing that that is the day to come and no real hope of that changing, then we get to think about how that scarcity trauma just creates anxiety. That anxiety prevents the women from being able to have any rest at all. And that, of course, affects the way that we're able to parent and oversee and even just model rest and parenting. So that's something that we talk about often these days.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Amy, according to the UNICEF, there was estimated 500,000 child in Gaza in need of psychological support before even the recent war, and that between 1 million in need of mental support and psychological support. And we know that every 10 minutes, as she showed, a child gets killed in Gaza. So how do you see or evaluate the current situation or the effect of trauma on the children of Gaza?
Yeah, we're looking at a long-term problem. So if we thought that peace was distant before October 7th, it's only gotten worse since October 7th, because the next generation, as we've learned from this new acronym, Wounded Child, No Surviving Family, it's not even no surviving parents, that we are going to have a huge generation of children that have to raise themselves and have to raise themselves into political consciousness. And that's going to be really hard then to build communities that are lasting and healthy and safe. And so I think we have to think about the long term here as we look to the people of Gaza.
Yeah, thank you. Christina, schools and education facilities are often destroyed, looted, or even occupied during war, leaving children for no place to turn for education or development. According to the UN, over 40 million children around the world who impacted by the war have no access to education. How do you see that related to maybe our school system and refugees coming to our school system?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Right now in the state of Ohio, according to the Ohio Department of Education, we have roughly around 60,000 students pre-K through 12 that are English language learners. And so when you think about families that are coming and not even having the outside services and support, but not even the ability to understand the language. We are finding here in Columbus City Schools, the largest school district in the entire state of Ohio, we have roughly about 95 different languages spoken in our district, representing a little over 105 different countries. And so we have families showing up almost daily and needing additional support. And what we're finding is that we are not equipped to be able to support the language. And so as a community and as a district, in order for us to be able just to provide that additional wraparound services that my colleagues up here were talking about earlier, we need to be able to at least, at minimum, meet our families and our students where they're at. And that has been a huge challenge for not only us, but districts across the country.
Wow, this is some information that we actually did not know, some of these numbers. Thank you. Dr. Dorothy, according to the United Nations, the women and girls are close to 80% of internally displaced people, refugees around the world. And the estimated 200,000 people, for example, killed in Guatemala, and 50% widows and 500,000 orphans. In Syria, half of the population are displaced, became immigrants and refugees. There's 13 million children in Iraq who were face starvation, diseases, death, and also displacement. What are some of these challenges that you face when this many refugees come with all what they carry with them from the countries or the war they were impacted for?
One of the biggest challenges is trying to address the issues in silos. So we look at one issue, okay, how do we make sure that we meet the housing need? Okay, how do we make sure that we meet the food insecurity need? And what we're doing in that is we're sending a message that these displaced women and children don't have the right to whole wellness. So just as we see, if we have children in school and we're offering top tier education, top of the line professionals are in our school districts, but these children are showing up to school hungry, we still don't have students who can take advantage of this learning opportunity. The same thing, if we have children who are fed and they are at these top tier schools, but they are still not sleeping well because of a underlying mental trauma, then we still haven't met the mark. So I think the first challenge that we must meet is we have to create think tanks for the professionals and the scholars and practitioners who are interested in solving community problems. We cannot keep everyone in separate rooms anymore, and we have to create a larger table. And that larger table must include women. It must include the voices that we are trying to help. We have to think about solving the issues for us, by us, with us.
Global conflict tracker, they categorize the conflicts on those 32 countries to 3 categories: the worsening, the unchanging, and the improving ones. And the situation in Palestine topped the worsening ones. We know that what's going on, and some of the data Sarah shared, and some of the information even shared by UCAMI, I believe. I'm not going to mention all the other countries, but this is specifically for you. What do you think are the challenges that make the war in Gaza and Palestine in general are #1 on the worsening conflict around the world?
Thank you for that question. Yeah. There's a wonderful book by Khalid Al-Gindi called Blind Spot. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the major reasons why we see a persistent conflict in this region is the blind spot that the American government has had in its role in that region. It's unable to see the complexity of party politics within Palestine, and it's treating Palestinians as this undifferentiated mass of people who should be grateful for anything that they get, as if they deserve nothing. And the other blind spot is the blind spot that our administration has towards the Israeli government, and in particular the Netanyahu government. Netanyahu is more right-wing than Donald Trump. And on October 7th, when our president said, we stand unconditionally behind Netanyahu, my gut dropped out of my whole body, because I knew exactly what that meant. I knew that when they said they wanted to turn Gaza into a parking lot, that was not hyperbole. And now we have utter devastation across Gaza. And I think those are some things to keep in mind, is the way in which we have kind of a cultivated ignorance, and we have a blind spot in the United States that we really need to address.
And there is, I just would like to add to that and get the answer from you, just to make it clear to some people who know what's going on, understand the situation, but many always stop from actually speak up or take any actions, is because of the tactic fear used that if you speak against Israel, then you are anti-Semitic. So I would love if you can maybe highlight that quickly, so we all can understand that, no, we are not. We are just trying to stop the war.
I mean, anti-Semitism is a real problem in our community. It's really awful. I have been the victim and the target of anti-Semitic actions. But there have been now 2 different definitions that have been circulating in our national discourse. One that I think is really unhelpful because it confuses the situation, and one that I think is a lot better. So there's one that's called the International Holocaust Remembrance Association. It was briefly used by the State Department, and it defines anti-Semitism as hostility, discrimination, violence towards Jews. If I have a really bad musical taste, and I do, I have very bad musical taste, you could hate on me, right, or worse. For my musical taste, I am also Jewish. And on that definition, you're then being anti-Semitic. So just sit with that for a moment. Mm-hmm. The alternative definition is offered by the Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism. Came out of a group of scholars that were realizing that this other definition, while helpful, was actually causing a lot of problems. It was it was trying to capture too much, and thus really diverting our attention away from the really significant stuff, the stuff that we really should be focused on. And this new definition says, what anti-Semitism is hatred, violence, discrimination against Jews because they are Jewish, or against Jewish institutions because they are Jewish. So people who are calling for a ceasefire now, or people who are calling for mandatory peace negotiations between Israel and Palestine, or even people who are anti-Zionist as I am, we are not opposed to Israel because it's a Jewish state. We are opposed because it is refusing to actually acknowledge equal citizenship to the Palestinians who are citizens of Israel. It is refusing to acknowledge the rights of Palestinians that it has as its neighbors. So we are opposing settler colonialism. We are opposing imperialism. We are opposing occupation. And it has nothing to do with the fact that it's a Jewish state.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Christina, as the president for the Columbus Board of Education and co-founder of and director of operation for Emergy, what keeps you up at night related to what we are talking about?
You know, and we talked about this briefly, and I've thought about that conversation ever since that day. But the fact that we are still having conversations around just doing the right thing. And I say that because, you know, earlier I mentioned to you the amount of students that we have across the state that are here that are still simply trying to learn English. What we know about that process, it can take anywhere from 5 to 7 years for a person to learn English. So we have an educational system that is structured not with that in mind. So we have legislation that does not allow us to give students more time to be able to learn the language that they need to be able to learn to then acquire all of the additional educational skills and support that they need to be able to graduate and go out into this world and create and maintain economic self-sufficiency. So when I see the need to be able to create real policy change around meeting the needs of all citizens of this country, and the fact that we still have young people that do not have the capacity and are not given the time to come learn the language, get the support that they need to then graduate, to go on and to do the things that they are destined to do, that keeps me up at night. When I walk into buildings and I see young students who are just, they don't know. They've been ripped out of what they've known in terms of family support, culture, language, and they're sitting in our buildings, and we're doing the best that we can. So I say this graciously because I see the amount of energy, time, support that our students, our teachers, our staff, community partners are pouring into this. But when I see legislation and when I see people who have the ability to help us create the changes that are needed to give our students the time that they need to be able to learn the language, and that's not in alignment with what actually needs to happen, those are the things that keep me up at night. And those are the things that as a community, we have to continue to advocate for. And so I think it's important, as my sister mentioned earlier, this work cannot be in silos. This work has to be the collective. It has to be all of us, whether it impacts everyone. And this idea that it only impacts a certain percentage of folks is where the disconnect is, I believe. Because when you talk about the pipeline for the workforce, when you talk about the pipeline of women in leadership, when you talk about the pipeline of making sure that there is representation, both gender lens and cultural, we can't do that if we can't even educate our young people and provide the support that our families need to be able to come here and to have a real shot at educational and economic self-sustainability and the ability to really have a seat at the table and a real part of the American dream.
Anyone of you would like to answer the same question?
The people of Gaza are facing a famine right now. World health organizations, UN workers are in there, and one of the ways in which they think about famine is they think about how much food, how many nutrients people are able to consume on average in a particular day. And Gaza and the people of Gaza have already crossed that threshold. So there are two remaining things that are used. One has to do with persistent malnutrition. So one of the ways in which they test for that is called the upper arm measurement. So they take a measurement and they look at how large the arm is, because they're looking for fat stores. Because one of the things that happens with persistent malnutrition is that our fat stores deplete, because we start basically consuming ourselves, and then our muscle depletes. And so one of the ways in which they can see how severely nourished somebody is to measure their arms. And the United Nations was in there. They tested a bunch of kids last month, and they found 1,000 of the kids that they had tested actually qualified for persistently malnourished. And then the third feature of famine is how many people per day are dying, literally, from malnutrition. And now we have 17 children have actually passed away recently from malnutrition, and it's really only going to get worse. I was up very late last night. I woke up early this morning, and that's really what kept me up, is the need to have food, and the need to have food delivered en masse. Airdrops are not enough. Airdrops give you pretty pictures of packages in the sky as if it were a stork, but it is not enough food. That is, the food that needs to cross by land, and it needs to cross en masse. A pier is not enough. It's going to take too long. So it needs to come by land en masse. And that's what I'm just completely shaken
Thank you
by.
so much for highlighting that very important part of the suffering that they're going through now. Dr. Jyoti, would you like to add anything? Thank you.
I would say what keeps me up at night is that in Central Ohio, we're still providing, we're still operating off of this favor mentality. So when immigrants and refugees come and resettle and find home in Central Ohio, the favor is done. You get to live here. But we are not offering any services beyond that bottom layer. So if you think about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have housing, we have food, we have security. So there's this just understanding that when immigrant and refugee families come here, do you have a house? Yes. Where is it? Is it safe? Another conversation. Do you have food? Is it the food that your body actually feels nourished from? Is it that soul food that makes you feel your best? Another conversation. Do you feel safe? Because you're surrounded by people who speak your language, can offer you community, can offer you safety, another conversation. But you are housed, fed, and safe. We don't have any services that go to that next tier, where we really get into that transition from surviving to thriving. So when we talk about the transition from surviving to thriving, in between there's striving. And striving would include services that, again, tend to that issue of English second language. We are only offering adults enough English second language opportunities to get a job. And that job most often is nowhere near offering family-sustaining wages. It offers no upper mobility, and it doesn't even match the skill set that was nurtured and invested in a home country. So these are the things that keep me up at night, that we're just saying that immigrant and refugee women and children are only worth the bare minimum, and that's our favor to you.
Thank you, Dr. Dorothy. Thank you. So there is two more questions, and I really wanted to ask all of you these two last questions. They're telling me the time is running out. We have like 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. But I would go ahead and ask you, because I'm sure everyone wanted to hear the answers for those two questions. Before we go to the last question, ask about recommendation, advice, and how to be part of this change that we're looking for, I wanted to ask some personal question on how women in your life supported you or inspired you to do what you're doing today. Dr. Dorothy?
My mother is also in the audience today, and she's here because a week ago we got a very sizable donation from Walmart for our organization. And I simply called her and said, Mama, we got work to do. I can't do it alone. I need to be fed and supported. And she said, I will be there on Thursday. She didn't ask any other questions. So that's what womanhood means to me. It means not a lot of questions, just a lot of show up. And I hope that that is the woman that I am for my community.
Mom. Dr. Amy?
It's my mom too. I mean, there's so many women who have held me up and made possibilities available to me. My mom is not here right now because she is caring for my dad, who is in the final stages of dementia, and it's a 24/7 job if anybody in your family knows anything about dementia. And she really wants him to end his days at home. That's where he wants to end. And I am continually inspired by how much love she has for my dad and then for the world. I mean, she is angry as hell about what's happening to people in Gaza right now. She calls me up. I'm like, I want to talk about my dad, but she wants to talk about what's happening to the women and children in Gaza. So tons and tons of love and inspiration from my mom. I'm so grateful to have had her as mine.
A big thank you to your mom. Christina?
I mean, I echo, moms are the best, and I'm so grateful. And I think, just culturally, as a Latina, your family is your village. And I think that that's something that, God willing, I'm extremely blessed to continue to have. And as a mother of daughters, being able to show them and lead by example, even when I get it wrong, I think it's important to continue just to be transparent about where you are in the journey. And there has been so many women mentors, even though I didn't even know they were my mentors, just women that I have met along my journey that have seen things in me that I didn't even see in myself. Like I said, I didn't grow up in this political sphere. And so that was something really, really scary for me. But just to meet so many amazing women as a young professional who said, you know what, you have the capacity and you can do this. And so I want to leave today, you can start and impact the life of a young girl or a woman at any point in your life. You don't need a lot of money, you don't need a lot of time, you don't need a lot of status. One conversation, one post, one text, that can truly change the trajectory of someone's life, and I'm living proof of that. And so I encourage you, no matter where you are in life right now, continue to know that you are valued, you are seen, and you are necessary. And so collectively, I believe we have all been products of some woman pulling us to the side and saying, you can do this and you should.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to end the last question with where Yukemi and Sarah both said, let's be part of the arena, have a seat on the table, and ask Dr. Amy what advice or recommendation on how to get involved and sustain these advocacy efforts.
Please leave here and call your elected officials. Call Columbus City Council. They've been considering a ceasefire resolution and they're at an impasse. Call your local and state representatives. We need to hear, they need to hear from us. They need to hear from us. And we are at a brink, and they need to hear us. I am so heartened by the 100,000 people who decided to vote uncommitted in Michigan, because that is actually the way to substantively have your voice heard in the United States, is through elections and through voting. And so I do hope that everybody is in active contact with their elected officials and will do so after this event. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Dorothy?
I would say find what you're comfortable with. I think when, just from the tragic events that were publicized in our nation, we got very used to sensationalized leaders, and we have people that will pull back and say, oh, I can't be that. Oh, that's too much for me. I don't want to say that. There's a place for everyone. And when we talk about a table, if you think about that table analogy, there's all types of seats at the table. So just find your seat. Your seat may be what I call myself a gentle disruptor. Your seat may be writing letters. Your seat may be, leading protests. Find your place, because there's a place and absolutely enough space for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. A quick, I'd like to close by saying the last time we checked last night, there was 130 registered people here. And I know that there is more than 60% of the people in this hall are leader women in the field they work out. So I encourage you to look around you. You are surrounded with powerful women. My question to the audience again, this is what we're going to close with. Do we all have the courage to cultivate and to demand an end to war and to call for ceasefire and get involved in peace building? We need to all work on that and make sure that we are part of that peace building process. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
We're in the home stretch, but our speakers have been phenomenal, don't you think? Let's all give them a round of applause. As in the last few years, I was tasked to do a summary of all the themes we've heard, but I am still sitting in the juiciness of all the things that we've heard. And in the essence of time, because I hope you will approach them after this event at our networking session if you have specific questions for them. But what I'm feeling overwhelmed with is the sense of mothering, not gender-based mothering, not parenthood mothering, which of course is part of that, but how we can each bring the spirit and the energy of mothering to all the work that we do. some of the words that resonated for me: how can we work towards a whole and a well world? So in the essence of time, I thought I would just read one of my favorite quotes from an author and political essayist. Her name is Arundhati Roy. Has anybody heard of her before? Some hands are waving, that's great. So I'm going to close this sort of summary session with a reference to a writer who writes about things so profoundly well. And she says, "To love, to be loved, to never forget your own insignificance, to never get used to the unspeakable violence and the vulgar disparity of life around you, to seek joy in the saddest places, to pursue beauty to its lair, to never simplify what is complicated or complicate what is simple, to respect strength, never power, above all to watch, to try and understand, to never look away, and never, never to forget." Thank you. Sister Marianne, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. What a day. I am gonna quickly introduce myself and Global Health, Education, and Development, which is the organization that I co-lead and one of the big sponsors of this event. But before, and I will also do some closing remarks for us. And before I get into all that, I want to give you a brief background of this event, the International Women's Day event in Central Ohio, which my co-committee and my friends and sisters have mentioned. This is the 14th event. This event was founded by Khadra Muhammad, which is a sister who immigrated from Somalia to the US and a fierce community leader. We used to hold it in the State House, and it always had a vibe of celebration. But this year, we were all heartbroken, and we were disappointed, and we were tired, and we were dealing with Ukraine and Palestine, and some family losses, and so many other issues. We had a discussion to not hold this event this year. We said, do we need to take a gap year? But then, voices among us said, well, we can have a different event this year where we share how we feel and we lend our voice to those that do not have the stages we have. So I'm glad we decided to do this. And it was the last minute when we said we can't stop, we need to pull it together, and we would have not been able to do that. I always have issues with mics. It seems a full-time job to just hold it in place. So it was really a short notice when we were like, we cannot be silent and we cannot stop celebrating International Women's Day, and we need to do something that marries what we always did and highlights a woman, but also talks about the atrocities that are going around the world and what's happening with women and children. And so when we decided, at that point, we haven't fundraised. we couldn't afford the estate anymore. We didn't want to glamorize, and we were like, what to do now? And so if it wasn't for other leaders in the community to step up, like the leadership at the Ohio History Connection, Megan, thank you so much. And if we didn't look within and say, we can still this pull off, let's make some calls, and let's host the event we want to host, this would have not been possible. So thank you everyone who stepped up stepped up and stood with us and felt that we needed to do this with us. Honestly, as much as I love celebrating women's success, today's event has touched me different and more way than the last 13 years have. I am here because of war. I am an immigrant, and I have seen the bombs that has been discussed, and I have seen the displacement, and I have lost loved ones to war. So it's just, this is real for me. It really, I've been in tears with all of during the speeches, and I thank everyone for really bringing it today and sharing your emotions and your experience with us. Wow, okay. So I'm Mariam Duale. I am with Global Health Education and Development. We are a nonprofit organization that focuses in providing access, health and education access for immigrant communities. I don't have to dwell of the need for that. I think our panelists, Christina and other panelists, have talked about the importance of access to information and to services. So that's what we do. We do a lot with mental health. Sister Dorothy has talked about it. We've worked together. So we do a lot of awareness and cultural competence trainings and things like that. And we're a co-host of this event and many other community events. So I did talk about, so that's, you can go to our website, our logo is there, and if you have any other questions, you can always find me. And at this point, we have had a fantastic event, in my opinion. We had really raw, emotional events, and we need to not let this go to waste. We have to capitalize what we have heard today and the emotions that we witnessed, and we need to leave this room with an agenda and call to action. Our call to action today is, as others before me said, that you all have a voice. You all matter. You all can affect a change. So what we need to do, leaving this room, is really exercise that. Is go out and demand a change and cease fire. And talk to your elected officials and go to your town hall meetings and post and demand change. We cannot just keep watching what's going on around the world, not only Pakistan and Palestine and Gaza, but also in Sudan and in Ukraine and all over the world. Women and children are suffering, and we need to disrupt that, and we need to stop that. And the ways we can do that have been highlighted, that we really need to put women in leadership positions. I wholeheartedly believe that we would not be in this situation had the percentages we've seen today up there were different for leadership. If we had 50% women in our state houses and Congress and all of offices, do you think we would be in this situation? No, we wouldn't. If we had leaders in Israel that were women, do you think we would be in this situation? No, we wouldn't. So does Sudan, Somalia, you name it, everywhere. And the first thing we can do is, we are in an election season. That is the first key we have, is to vote. Come out. Please come out. Let's vote. Let's vote. And let's vote for women. And let's vote for people that are for the people and that are working through justice. Okay, so I can get excited and write a lot. But yeah, so another thing is, like everyone else say, if you're at the table, you can lift someone else. You can leave the door open for other women. If you are at the other side, your job is not done. You just don't have to govern right. You also have to keep the door open and bring other women along with you. And finally, we need to encourage one another, and mothering, I love that. We need to remember that. I want to close out with thanking our sponsors. The Ohio History Connection, Global Health Education and Development, the Libre Initiative, the Arab American Institute of Ohio, all these partners that you see, without them we will not be able to pull this together. So we want to thank everyone for their effort, their time, the donations, and everything they have provided. I also want to thank you all for coming to be with us, because I know it's Saturday and you probably had a lot of other plans, or you could have been in bed. It has been tiring, but you know, you really chose to be here, and we really appreciate you, and from the bottom of our heart, thank you so much. And my sisters, what I love about this event is the fact that it's organized by women from all over the world that are leaders in their position. So my sisters, Rebecca, Sandra, Lair, Guadalupe, Samia, I love you all, and thank you so much for everything you do for the community and for us. And with that, thank you so much, and we have, as you've seen in the flyer, we had an auction, so if you haven't already, silent auction, if you haven't taken a look at it, please take a look at it, and make sure to contribute if you can. We are going to use the proceeds for this event and next events. And also we have a wonderful reception upstairs for networking and light refreshments. So thank you so much and enjoy.